How's it going, everybody? All right. Who is in the house? Let me see. Yeah, this is hold on here. All right. Hey Denise. What's up, JD, my dude? How's everybody doing? What's up, Tammy? All right. Hey Shannon. Hope everybody's having a good Wednesday night. Uh looks like we're gonna do a little something here tonight. Uh I I want to see if I can see if a few more people log on here. Give them a minute to do so. In the meantime, I'll shoot the shit with you for a second here before I actually get started. And hold on. I am actually going to be drinking a little wine tonight. I don't know if I'm drinking alone or not. Does anybody else have anything to drink here? But the plan is not to get too hammered. I try not to do that too much these days. But yeah. Hey, Boston hippie. Seeing a lot of familiar people here. It's looking good. It's looking good. All right. Well, I have one mod, and that's really, I think, all I need, which is good. I don't know if anybody else plans on coming in, but that's okay. All right. Well, you do you, Tammy. Right on. Hey, there's Steven Sanders. There's my boy. All right. And yeah, I think I am going to go ahead and get started here. Winter green gum. All right. Where is my... Oh, okay. There we go. All right, everybody. So tonight's topic, as some of you already know, is empathy. I wanted to talk to you a little bit about that. Now, this is a fun word because it's used quite a bit, and so I like to kind of look things up. I like to find out their definitions before I get to talking about them. You know, because sometimes I think I know what a word means before I actually really know what it means, and a lot of times I'm right. Sometimes I'm wrong, and so I like to be sure because I I'm afraid of being one of those people who just spews his mouth and has shit coming out of his mouth without having any idea what he's talking about. So I don't like being one of those people if I can help it. Although I think we're all kind of guilty of that from time to time. So yeah, I want to talk to you a little bit about empathy. The synonyms, according to Google, are as follows: affinity with, rapport with, sympathy with, understanding of, sensitivity toward, sensibility to, identification with, awareness of, fellowship with, fellow feeling for, like-mindedness with, togetherness, closeness to, informal chemistry. And its example of it being used in a sentence is: What is really important about learning a language is learning empathy for another culture. I found that really interesting that that's the sentence that they used to example that word, and which I absolutely agree with. So tell you a little bit about me. I am actually half Dominican by blood on my mother's side, and I take great pride in this, as a matter of fact. And please don't ask me what the fuck is going on over there with people dropping dead, because I don't have the first fucking clue. Okay. I really don't know. I'm just in the dark with that as anybody else. So I don't know. But I spent a little time over there as a kid. Uh, and I've been to visit a couple of times. My family and I had a blast. And at the time, the American dollar was worth a lot more than it was here at the time. And I went to a wedding with my family when I was like in my 20s and took advantage of that, and we just lit that shit up. And my grandfather was a big deal there in politics at one point, way back in the day. According to my mom, I don't really know a whole lot about it. But I remember at that wedding, like there was a bottle of Johnny Red on every single table. And it was, everybody was dancing. And when my grandfather had shown up, and he was really old already, and people were, he had people helping him walk because he was so old. He, everybody just got quiet and just watched him enter the atmosphere. And it was really something else. So, I mean, people treated us, it was pretty crazy. People treated us, really special. And I never really understood why. So I don't really know the history of what's going on, or what was, I don't know a lot of my family history as far as that goes, but and when I was a kid living there, there was like limited water, and forget about it being hot water. That shit wasn't happening. uh, I remember having to bathe with buckets, and it sucked stallion dick. I mean, it was really shitty. It sucked. Like, Frosted Flakes were a luxury, and I never once had a bowl of it without sugar ants too. Yeah, it was futile to even expect to not take a bite without sugar ants in your spoon. It's just the way it was, you know. And the mosquitoes, man, the fucking mosquitoes were so big. They had to fly like super low and super slow because their wings could barely carry their weight. And for some weird reason, right, I get blisters on the bottom of my feet. Like they would say it was from the mosquito bites. Like I would get bit on my arm, and somehow an allergic reaction that I get blisters at the bottom of my feet. So I couldn't even walk around without pain. It was awful. It was an awful experience. My family just couldn't even figure out why. I did get to see some movies in the theater that came out later there than they did here in the States. Like, I saw Enter the Dragon with Bruce Lee in the theater, which was pretty dope, right? I mean, awesome. It's still an all-time favorite of mine. I also saw Rocky 3, also an all-time favorite of mine. And Porky's. I don't know if anybody remembers Porky's. I remember seeing Porky's with my mom, and she thought it was like a Porky Pig thing. Then all of a sudden, bam, titties all over the screen, right? So so it wasn't all bad, I guess, right? So yeah, so I don't really know what's going on over there, and it pretty much sucks living there. But here's the thing, right? I think about that, and then I can't help but think about my grandmother, right? And man, dude, I miss my grandmother so much. I mean, she died many years ago, but I missed the way she cooked. I mean, we had arroz con pollo every day for lunch and dinner with plantains and eggs for breakfast every day, right? And there was always oil and vinegar on the table. I remember I would dump that shit all over my rice. I mean, it was plain white rice. Like, how else are you gonna eat that? And I mean, I can taste it now, thinking about it. And I was a pain in the ass, spoiled, rotten little American Atari playing TV watching shit. But my grandmother was a saint. I mean, she was always kind to everyone and sweet and just pleasant natured, and she loved me and my brother and cousins like you couldn't imagine. I was a pain in her ass, but she seemed to love me, and she seemed to understand me better than anybody, and I remember she taught me this prayer, as a small kid, and we'd say it like every night together, and my, I it's hard to remember because I mean my Spanish sucks, and I remember like she taught it to me like as I was like learning how to talk, so I didn't know what I was saying, and it, it it was weird. Like I had no idea what I was saying, but what it was about to me was what it was about, just having that thing with her. You know what I mean? Like, just it was time to go to bed, and what made it cool was just laying there and my grandmother hovering over me, and then she would say this prayer with me, And hold on, it went something like, how did it go? It went en nombre del Padre, del Hijo, Espíritu Santo, amén. Ande de mi guarda, dulce compañía, no merecen padre, ni de noche ni de día, hasta que me ponga con paz y alegría con todos los santos, Jesús y María. And then you repeat the en nombre del Father, del Hijo, Espíritu Santo, amén, which, obviously it means in the name of the Father, Son, and the Holy Spirit. So, she was very, very Catholic. And, and it rhymed, in Spanish, it rhymed. So it was a cool thing, and it just, I don't practice Catholicism. I'm probably the only one in my family that never got their first communion, So like when I go to a wedding, in my family, or and it's Catholic, I can't go up and take the communion because I never had the ceremony, So, it's whatever, but it's, say what you will about, I have my feelings about organized religion and all that sort of thing, but there's beautiful traditions to pretty much every organized religion. There's very, very positive, beautiful traditions that go with them, um and so no matter how much of a brat I was, my grandmother, she was just always so sweet, getting back into that. Like, she'd sit and she'd sew all day, and she'd pray to her little, Catholic baseball cards of her saints, right? And she'd watch her, novelas, the Spanish soap operas, and she'd watch her comedy shows, and she'd laugh, and she'd sing to me all the time, and I never saw her lose her shit or even like really complain, right? She was I mean, she was a heavenly entity incarnate, man. I shit you not. The closest thing to an angel you'll ever see walking this earth, right? And she seemed to effortlessly have empathy for everyone and everything. It blows my mind when I think about her now, right? Like, I gotta stop and actually make a conscious effort to empathize with others at times, right? Other times it just kind of takes over, I like when that happens because I don't feel like such a total shitbag. But I got to thinking about this because even though I hated living there in Dominican Republic, I love being around my family. I feel that deep connection with them. I love that feeling I get when I smell chicken cooked that certain way. or when I hear my elders speaking in Spanish loud as fuck over each other, but with no anger or anything. They're just loud fucking people, you know. there's there's a vibe when you walk into a Hispanic household, and it's almost always the most welcoming vibe you'll ever feel, man. Like, it's really dope. It really is. And when I was a kid, me and my brothers and cousins didn't care much for it. But as an adult now, I I long for it, as I suspect, they do too, my cousins and my brother. That's where I feel that empathy with that sentence Google used to example it, right? I hated speaking Spanish as a kid, but now the only reason I avoid it is because I'm so terrible at it. All my Cuban friends from Hialeah, Florida, like, they make fun of, how shitty my Spanish is. But I adore my family culture and feel so grateful that it's such a major part of me. Like, my family's tight, man. That's a great thing. And I took this for granted my whole life. But whenever I meet other tight Hispanic families who are, I get that feeling of empathy. I can totally relate. And it's such a dope vibe. We're all just spread out so thin and all over the place now. So I don't even know if I'll ever experience that again. But I do almost, I do almost anything to get to, just, I would love that. So I get that whole connection between learning the language and understanding and experiencing the culture being pretty vital to it, right? I'm definitely feeling that, but there's all these other dimensions to empathy, right? I mean, for instance, I live in the South, right? Some might even consider it the deep South. For sure, it was years ago, you know? So there's older folks here who have been here their whole lives. Like, when real ugly racism and bigotry was a thing, I realize it still is, but not the kind I'm talking about. I'm talking about that fucked up shit that you see in documentaries and old footage of, like, violence, just pure violence. You know, people, good people, getting sprayed down with fire hoses by uniformed firemen. People, good people, being beaten by uniformed cops. People, good people, being spit on, yelled, and cursed at, tarred and feathered, shot, hung from trees, simply for standing in one spot, steadfast and not moving, while simply saying, no, I have just as much a right to be here as you do. That's a level of racism and bigotry many of us are fortunate enough to not have had to live around. So I work in a fitness club, right? It's a real nice upscale one too. This is not your sweaty, swamp ass, cramped, muscle head type place where you're fighting over who's next to use the bench press. This place has like 3 indoor pools. It's not cheap, and you're not signing with us unless you're committed to making it part of your lifestyle, right? Everyone talks to each other, and most everyone knows each other by name. Now, I'm about to tell you, I'm about to tell you about the time that my ears heard the most racist statement that ever came out of someone's mouth in the 40 plus years that they've been attached to my head. Okay. And I was fairly new at one point, and I meet this gentleman who comes in on the weekends with his little granddaughter. He spoils her a little because, that's what grandpas do, right? He comes up to the counter, and he buys her a bunch of stuff, like, muffins and Skittles and smoothies, and shoots the shit with us at the counter. We're like bartenders, but we don't serve booze, and the gentleman is chit chatting with me, and it's real nice and pleasant. And we get to a point where he mentions that he's retired. And I asked him what kind of work he retired from. He tells me that he was in corrections as a prison guard. I of course found this extremely interesting. And I immediately had to ask if he found it rewarding. You know, he said yes. And that he even met and worked with some famous people who had come through as prisoners. you know I was all ears at this point, waiting for him to start dropping names. And I was like, yeah, like who, so he answers pretty humbly, but with a sense of pride. And he says, well, James Earl Ray was one. Shook his hand and even got his autograph. I I was fucking shocked at the way he said this so nonchalantly that a part of me wouldn't allow me to like even process it for a second. Like I it didn't register. I I was like, I know that name. He assassinated someone who's rather important, didn't he? And he kind of chuckled and he was like, yeah. I was like, don't tell me. And he's like, doctor, and I was like, Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. And he goes, bingo, that's it. Dude, I didn't even know what to do with myself. I It was crazy. I'd never heard any shit like that in my life, dude. Here's this man practically bragging about the fact that he shook hands with the perpetrator of arguably this country's most infamous hate crimes in all of its history. Dude, not one word of that last sentence was an exaggeration. I promise you that. But even though there was this little voice asking me if I should ask the old man, well, dude, what kind of shitty motherfucker are you? You know? But I just kept talking and listening to him. He was talking about his daughter and how successful she made herself. It was his daughter's kid that he was with and spending the day with and spoiling, right? He was talking about how successful his daughter made herself and how much he likes her husband. And then he asked for one of our salespeople by name, and that salesperson happens to be a black man. The little girl asked for him and was super excited to see him and just loves him to death. She thinks he's the coolest dude ever. So it was abundantly clear to me that this man did not teach his children to be bigots or racists. I can't presume to explain it, but if I had to guess, I'd say he was probably raised that way. And James Earl Ray was probably considered a hero in his childhood household. He admired what he was taught to admire, but did not at all seem to practice the behavior of anyone who had any hate in his heart for anyone, much less people of other cultures or race. I stand there and I shoot the shit with this man all the time. He comes in, he's a member. He comes in all the time. I shake hands with him all the time. He's a good man as far as I can tell. Yeah, I just let myself talk to the gentleman without judgment, and it felt amazing to have been pleasantly surprised after having listened to him just talk about his life in such a genuinely grateful manner. I mean, it was inspiring. I even just recently did something that I regretted immediately, and I'm pretty sure it was corrected because I felt bad right away, and I did what I had to correct it immediately. And it's weird. I went from feeling contempt for a person to empathizing with them in a matter of a second. And just as bad, I was inconsiderate to others by failing to take into consideration how it could have affected them. you know, people I've grown to like and respect very, very much. It happens, you know. So I'm real grateful to get to feel that empathy, man. It really is a blessing to get to feel that. I want to be someone that contributes good things to others' existence. I don't want to be one of those people who makes it worse, right? So, it's pretty fucking rad to me that I get to feel that, and the experience of connecting, even on the slightest level, with someone else. Literally anyone else. It's good shit. I recommend drinking it when it tends to go down for you like that, man. You know, now I see a lot of people on social media refer to themselves as empaths, and have even known a few, and I can't help I, I I I can't help but think it's one of those words that's kind of thrown around pretty loosely. For for those of you in the groups, you know what words I'm talking about. I'm sure I'll see them here in the chat, you know. Uh those words that are just thrown around real loosely because people don't really necessarily understand what those words mean, they happen. Um but speaking of that, that brings me to another point. Um Many of you come from groups that involve the Watts case. Both Kay and myself have been very vocal about a certain group of people who like to call themselves shiners. Now, this group of people have been campaigning to silence Kay because of her views on different perspectives she's offered on the case. And what basically drives them is the fact that they simply don't like those perspectives. They don't like the idea of having to face the possibility that a murder victim who happened to be a mother and a wife and was loved by friends and family may have behaved in a manner that was not exactly the person she made herself out to be on social media or to, whoever. Therefore, Kay has explored this possibility, and in a particularly unapologetic manner. Granted, sometimes in ways that are even a bit difficult for even me to swallow, but I've gotten lost in my own personal feelings for the case and handled things in ways that I normally wouldn't. So I have absolutely no right to throw stones, since I got a few big windows in my own house, right? So, but I've stated so many times why I support her and her methods. And it's because she simply has her First Amendment right to do so. I won't beat a dead horse and repeat everything I said on my last live, but I do stand by every word. You know, but what I'm getting at is, I hear the words God and prayer thrown around a lot by these people. And, you know, it's it's a crazy thing, man. He's that's what really, really bugs me is I talked in my last live a lot about hypocrisy and trying to be aware of hypocrisy, of our own hypocrisy. Uh and this is one of those things where that can be real dangerous. I mean, you've got a lot of these people who become so fanatical in their beliefs, and it gets to a point where they end up doing and saying things, and before they realize it, it's extremely contrary to the things that they say they believe in. And I mean, let's look at Muslims. I mean, are Muslims all bad? No, of course not. And we sit there and for a long time we would see a Muslim and we freak out because there was a handful of them out there doing these terrible things and using their beliefs as some sort of soapbox to stand on and in some twisted way justify their actions. And I don't think this is much different. Now, obviously, I mean, they're not out bombing anybody or anything. I don't. That's not what I'm talking about. But when you're, you know, I've been hearing it since the first week of when Chris Watts was arrested almost a year ago. The same people that say things like "shine like shan'ann" tend to say things like, "I hope Chris Watts burns in hell," or "I hope he's being raped in prison every day," or "someone should kill him the way that he killed his family." And then say things like, I know he'll get it. I know he'll get his because it's God's plan." Like I would read this shit myself. I would read this shit myself before there was even any information on the case. People just automatically jump to judgment, and they would use God and their Christianity to somehow justify judging this guy, you know, and it's pretty fucking crazy. And you know, and then they say these things, and then when somebody debates them, they end up closing whatever they say with some shit like, "Well, I'll be praying for you, you know, have a good day. I'll be praying for you." And I, I don't know. I it's something that just boggles me. And the fact that there's like no self-awareness involved. And I honestly think that what happens is there is that little voice inside them that tells them that they're wrong, but then they somehow justify it. And then they tell themselves this is how bad it gets. And then they tell themselves, "Oh, well, I they I don't know how do I even word this. I feel like they'll say something like, this is God's plan for me to to speak up on Shanann's behalf. God wanted me to do this, and this is how they justify spewing out these hateful remarks. And yet, instead of saying, "Hey, wait a minute, this isn't very Christian of me," if God has a plan, then God will take care of Chris Watts. It's not our place. It's not our place to even worry about it. Let the justice system do its thing. And that's what blows my mind is the justice system did do its thing. It totally did its thing. And it's not good enough. You know, just because somebody says things about a murder victim that you don't like, it turns into this awful thing. It turns into this new thing that you've got to get in an uproar about. And I won't beat that horse again. I went over that the last time, about how pointless that is. But and this isn't going to be a long live. I'm going to keep this short and sweet. I'll probably even go on again tomorrow, because I happen to be off tomorrow night. But I'm going to read a couple of things here. I did a little research. So in my attempt to try and get through to while empathizing with these folks, I came across some passages, and you know that they may relate to and understand. So if there's any shiners listening to right now, you know, I came across these things, and I wanted to read them to you. And they are as follows. There has never been a great love movement in the history of the world that hasn't wound up killing countless numbers of people, we must assume, to prove how much they love them. Every hypocrite who ever walked the earth has had pockets bulging with love. I'll say this again. There has never been a great love movement in the history of the world that hasn't wound up killing countless numbers of people, we must assume, to prove how much they love them. Every hypocrite who ever walked the earth has had pockets bulging with love. Love is one of the most intense feelings felt by man. Another is hate. Forcing yourself to feel indiscriminate love is very unnatural. If you try to love everyone, you only lessen your feelings for those who deserve your love. Repressed hatred can lead to many physical and emotional ailments. By learning to release your hatred towards those who deserve it, you cleanse yourself of these malignant emotions and need not take your pent up hatred out on your loved ones. So I get where you're coming from, Shiners. You're only human and you can't be perfect. So realistically, according to this last passage, you can't possibly be expected to always set such a Christian example. I totally understand and empathize. Now, if you're wondering who I'm quoting in those passages, his name is Anton Sandar LaVey, the founder of the Satanic Church and author of the Satanic Bible. That's all I got to say about that. So I'm going to go ahead and before I close out here, go ahead and look at the chat. See, people showed up here. I'm sorry to cut it so short. I just did not. I wanted to keep it nice and simple. I didn't want to go too rambling. I didn't want to ramble too much on this subject. Because like I said, these are part of this guideline that I set for myself. And so when I do these lives, I do them for two reasons pretty much. And it's just it's a therapeutic way for me to think out loud. And you guys seem to like them, so I just keep doing them. So I appreciate everybody logging in and listening. And empathy happens to be part of the acronym that makes up the glare. And so it's something that I definitely try to incorporate in my everyday decision making. And like I said, it seems to help me get through everything a lot easier, and I enjoy it. So I like the idea of being able to share it with you guys. Okay, so meteorologist Stephanopoulos, I have seen you in these chats before. Hi. You said you just found out that you're a serious empath during your personality test. Okay. I think I keep seeing these personality tests online and things like that. And I don't mean to shit all over them or anything, but I mean, to me, it's pretty simple. Like, if you're capable, it's just a question of, if you're capable of feeling empathy, you know, learn this about yourself and try to indulge in it, you know? And obviously not to a point to where people are going to take advantage of you. You also, I mean, that's where self-awareness comes in, you know, and that's where, uh, logic comes in. You have to be able to kind of separate you have to kind of be able to separate these things in your mind so that they work in your benefit. you know you've got to be able to figure out a way to benefit your environment by applying these things, but also make sure that you're not doing it in a self-destructive manner, because it defeats the purpose. you know it- Becoming self-destructive in that sense just completely defeats the purpose. So yeah, so I don't, I'm this kind of empath or I'm that kind of empath. I mean, to me it's just either you're a sociopath or you're an empath, pretty much. It's just a question of how much you apply it. Do you make a conscious effort to be empathetic towards others? And most of us do. We just don't do it probably as much as we could and as much as we should, because we're afraid of being hurt. We're afraid of putting our own guard down. And that's you know it's something that we have to learn to kind of get over, I feel like. For me personally, that's that that defense mechanism, man, that'll kill you faster than a bullet. As far as your spirit goes, that always having that guard up, man, it just doesn't, it prevents you from living your life. It prevents you from experiencing beautiful things in your life, in my opinion. So I don't, it's funny when like, if I meet a girl and I really like her, you know I go all in, because why not? What's it gonna hurt? I didn't used to be that way, but what's it gonna hurt? I mean, I might get a little hurt, but I'll get over it. I always do. But I'd rather her know everything that I have to offer. I'd rather go into every possible relationship, whether it be platonic, whether it be romantic. I'd rather go into every possible relationship with a completely open heart, so that that person knows what they're getting. And hopefully that person will reciprocate and give me that same amount of trust. And I can prove to that person that I don't take that trust for granted. And that person is grateful, is as grateful as I am, uh, for receiving that trust, and treasures it and guards it. You know, so otherwise you're just missing out. You're missing out on what could be. You're left wondering, well, could I have had a great relationship with this person? Maybe. But how could you ever know? How could you ever know if they never really know the deep, real you? I mean, I don't want to go into anything like that. That's half-assed. That sucks. And then you're gonna get the wrong idea about me. So I don't want you to get the wrong idea about me. Fuck all that. I'd rather exactly. I'd rather put all my shit out there so that you know what you're getting. And then, okay, Sandy Jersey girl, you're saying that's key, getting the same in return. See, no, see, that's what I'm trying to avoid, is that mentality. I don't want to expect anything in return. I want to hope for it, but I don't want to expect it. I don't want to do things. I don't want to give somebody something expecting something in return. You know, whether it's something material or whether it's something spiritual. I don't want to do that. I don't want to be that person. So, right. The only way, right, Tammy, exactly. The only way that I can hope for an equal exchange of energy is is to get just give my energy blindly, just faith, if you will, just put my shit out there, and hopefully somebody will feel the same way, you know, and then it'll happen. But if I'm not genuinely taking that risk, I'm never, I'm never putting myself in a position to have that type of relationship that I want to have with someone else, right? I mean, you can't. It's like people who fantasize about winning the lotto and they never play it. They never spend the dollar on it. You how crazy is that to sit there and fantasize about buying a yacht? When I win the lotto, I'm going to do this, and when I win the lotto, I'm going to do that. But you're not even playing the lotto. So how the fuck are you ever going to get that? How can you possibly expect it? Right? I mean, that's craziness to me. So hold on, I'm still going over these questions here. Yeah, I got you, Sandy. Um, okay, Tammy's asking, do I own that Bible? Do I own? You mean a copy of the Satanic Bible? What if I did? I mean, uh, if I owned a copy of the Satanic Bible, does that necessarily make me a Satanist? Just curious what you think as far as that goes, because I don't think that would necessarily make me a Satanist. I've read the Quran. That doesn't mean that I'm a Muslim. I've read the Bible. I don't necessarily consider myself a Christian. Um, I see some retracted messages here. I see some deleted. So I guess somebody might have been misbehaving here. Um, but no, to answer your question, Tammy, I do not own a copy of the Satanic Bible. But I would. I mean, I merely just kind of uh Googled things that kind of just led me to that, and it helped me make my point. Um and and I'm a firm believer that um every single possible piece of literature on this planet is a source of wisdom. It just depends on how you perceive it and how you choose to take it in. So no matter what the source, I mean, you look at, you know, what is it that I can't quote it word for word or even close to word for word, but I know that the art of war is real big on knowing your enemy. Sun Tzu's art of war is real big on knowing your enemy. So it's silly to not educate yourself on things that you even disagree with. If you plan on taking on something and debating it, it makes perfect sense to understand it to its fullest capacity, so that you can understand it. I mean, if you're if you're a kung fu fighter and you're about to take on somebody who's a master of judo, I think it would make sense to learn some judo, right? You know, I think that's why mixed martial arts it has become what it is. Exactly, mixed martial arts is it makes sense to learn every possible martial art so that you're ready for whatever attack and you can counter it somehow effectively. Um, so I think that applies in anything, in any challenges that life throws at you. You know, it just makes sense to educate yourself as much as possible on whatever you can. And this is coming from somebody who's not very well educated, to be honest. Like I can't get into a political. I have strong beliefs, strong political views, or I have platforms that I believe in, but I'm not educated enough to debate somebody who's educated on political science. There's no way. I'd never win. You know, what I think is right versus what I think is wrong is not going to be good enough against somebody who's actually done the homework on the history of politics. It's not going to work. You know, it's like taking a wooden sword to a gunfight. It's just not going to work. So I don't presume to try to try to debate anybody who's actually educated in politics. Yeah, you're that's a good point there, Sandy. Kay, um she does that's I think that's her biggest message as far as to her fans go, or anybody willing to listen, is to, try to look at everything from an objective point of view, you know. And I think her methods can be unconventional in the sense that she'll make herself to be that that person. She'll make herself to be that, that person who's the bad guy in order to open someone's eyes to another perspective, and it causes her to get a whole lot of hate. But so that's why I always take a little bit of my time in my lives, is because me being a fan of hers and what she does, I think it's important to defend that, because people aren't fucking getting it, and yeah, maybe it's her method sometimes, but who gives a shit what her methods are if you know what point she's trying to make when she's doing it? That's what I'm saying. Who cares? You know, I I mean, if I'm sitting here and and, I'm pouring my heart out to you, but every other word out of my mouth is fuck. Are you gonna focus on the fact that all I'm saying is fuck? Does that make sense? No, it doesn't. It doesn't make any sense at all. So uh, I say, just, hey, Irish, what's happening? Irish is here. That's cool. How are you? So yeah, it doesn't make sense to me. Um, to just focus on one thing that just doesn't really matter at all, and ignore everything else around it, you know. Um, but so yeah, no. To answer your question, I do not own a copy of the Satanic Bible, but it's for no other reason than I've just never gotten around to going out and buying it and reading it. But I happen to know people who believe in the Satanic Church. Um, and what's funny is, when I was that kind of led me down this rabbit hole, and I was reading some of the stuff in there. And I'm gonna say, man, I'm gonna go ahead and say it. Some of the stuff was making a lot of sense, you know. Some of the stuff in there was making a lot of sense, and I could see why people, because if you're a Christian, common sense would dictate, well, devil bad, God good, you know, Satan bad, Jesus good, so I'm just going to dismiss anything other than, but it, you know, and it's funny to me because a lot of times, a Christian would say, well, it only makes sense because the devil is the greatest trickster that the world has ever known. And, Satan's art is confusion. Believe it or not, I actually spent, I'll tell you this little tidbit. I actually spent a good chunk of my adolescence as a born again Christian. I was about 14 till I was about 16, I think. And it was just a place, there was this church where I found sanctuary. And it was great. For a little while there, it was nice to be a part of something. I was in a real awkward age where I just couldn't relate to anybody. I was trying to figure out myself. I was trying to figure out what I believed in. I annoyed the shit out of my family with it. I alienated a lot of people because I got real judgmental, and I was, pointing fingers at people, and I felt like I was on a high horse because, I carried my Bible around everywhere, and I was a real shithead about it. And but I was totally, as Christians like to call it, on fire for God. That was the big term. Oh, look at this kid, the pastor in the front, I would sit on the front pew, and the pastor would be like, this young man right here, he's on fire for God. Look at him. He's on fire for God. And I'd be so proud. I'd just sit there all proud of myself, pleased with myself. And, you know, all little girls liked me and everything. But the thing was, is I remember I went to youth group. I went to church literally 3 times a week, twice on Sunday and once on Wednesday for youth group. Right. And the, the youth pastor would give me a ride home every night. It's cool. He's a cool dude. He's all right. And this is not going where you're thinking. But it was funny. He would tell me, he'd say, when, I remember everyone, everyone in the church was getting slain in the Holy Ghost. Everybody was, everybody, the hype would happen just before they passed the collection plate, but I didn't put that together yet. But the hype was happening where they're passing around the collection plate and everything. And the and people would start dropping to the floor and going in convulsions and yelling in tongues, right? And there would be this whole spectacle, and I'd be like, wow, and people would be crying, and there was this major energy in there. And I wanted so bad to be anointed in the Holy Spirit. I wanted that so bad. And and I would talk to my pastor about it, and I'd be like, why isn't that happening to me? I don't understand. Does God think that I'm not good enough for that? Why am I not good enough? Why are these people? I saw this other kid over here going around the corner and smoking pot with the kids from the neighborhood before church, and here he is slain in the Holy Ghost. Why is that not happening to me? And he'd be like, well, God's funny like that. What do you so And then he had the nerve to ask me, well, what are you struggling with? What sins are you struggling with right now? He tells me, right? And I was fucking 15. I was 15. I was just about to turn 16. And I mean, what sins do you think I was struggling with, man? Lust. I was, I was a walking hard on everywhere, you know? And so I I tell him, yeah, girls, everything, I mean, I've been watching porn since I was 13, so my whole thing, it's like, so porn was like fresh to me and everything. It was great. And, you know, and he goes, do you still have porn? Do you? And I was like, well, yeah. He's like, I want you to go in your house. He drops me off one night, right? He goes, I want you to go in your house and I want you to get me every piece of pornography that you have and bring it to me, and I'm gonna throw it away. And I said, yeah, exactly. You know where this is going. So I said, okay, you know, I said, okay. And I went in there all enthusiastic and just, and I gave him this trash bag full of fucking tapes, man. Okay, look, you know what, in the 90s, what a kid had to go through to obtain porn, like video porn. Do you have any idea the struggle that was? I had to take my bike. I had to cut school, right? I had to get blank tapes. I had to take my VCR in my backpack, put it in my backpack, cut class, plan a cut party with, a ditch party with a kid who told me that his dad had porn, right? So while his parents were at work, I had to like go to his house and I had to connect my VCR. So I had to like ride across town on my bike with my VCR and my backpack and a blank tape and hook the VCRs together and then just sit there and dub the tapes for hours while this kid's parents were at work, and hope to God they didn't come home early, you know? So I, this. No, see, that's all right. So Dustin, yeah, Skinamax, man, that shit wasn't enough for I didn't have cable, but even still, like, I was already spoiled by like hardcore porn. I like to see penetration. I love that shit. I was all into that, right? So, I was spoiled by this already. I was like, Skinamax, ha, have fun with that, you know. So I'm like, I had to go through this whole mission. So I did this all the time. I made friends with kids who would tell me that their parents had porn, and then I would fucking plan these things and go and execute this to get it done, right? And then, you know, I would and then all of a sudden I got to give this guy, you know, a, all of it that I fucking went through hell to get, right? And I give it to him, and it's gone. All my porn's gone, right? And then, sure enough, man, the dude has this little like little youth fellowship retreat thing at his place, and you know, the guest bathroom's being used. I gotta pee real bad. He tells me to go and use his bedroom, and there, dude, the motherfucker didn't even try to hide it. This motherfucker, and it was like right, like, I mean, it was honest. I mean, even, dude, grown-ups today hide their porn. Even like when they don't even have kids, they hide their porn. This guy just had it like set up in his bookshelf, like it was all good. And I'm like, dude, I know my fucking porn tape when I see it. I obviously didn't label it porn, because I didn't want my folks to catch it. I had it labeled some other shit so that they wouldn't think it was what it was, and they wouldn't find it, right? So, yes, Dustin, the struggle was definitely real. So, then I see it sitting there, and then right then and there, man, like my world fell apart. Like my world completely fell apart. I completely lost faith in everything. It was just like starting over. It was crazy. And then I started to take into perspective, And then for a long time I was just against religion altogether. Just terrible, and then I became a little more open-minded to it the older I got, because I know people who are heavily involved in organized religion, and they live their lives in very, very positive ways, and they inspire and they help other people, and they they're just good people. They use it for exactly what it's said to be for. So it's great. So um and yeah, one of these days, hopefully Kay and I, we've been talking about doing something on religion, so we're going to talk a lot more about that in depth. I'm looking forward to having a deep conversation with her about that on a live with you guys. I think that's going to be really fun. um but yeah, I'm going to go ahead and call it. uh Hey, Nicole, you made it. It's good to see you. And Liz, wow. Sorry, I haven't been paying that much attention to the chat, but um okay, wintergreen gum. Satan is closer to us than God. Okay, well, if that's what you think, that's great for you. Um and Gene Glad, don't ever say that again. Fuck is never just a word. It's fantastic. It's magical. Um, but I know what you mean. I was just being facetious. Um, but yeah. Anyway, um, but yes, Liz, I agree. Kay has a way of opening people's minds, and that's what attracted me to her channel to begin with. Um, so yeah. Anyway, um, what did I see what God did to us, man? Uh, yeah. Uh, I don't know, man. I'm a big. If you're gonna ask me, do I believe in intelligent design? That's a deep question. I'm not going to get too deep into that, and I do believe in intelligent design. Now, do I want to call it God, or that's another conversation? It's a conversation I'd rather save for my conversation with Kay, and I'll be happy to answer that then. But for now, I'm just going to say yes, I do believe in intelligent design, but I don't necessarily, you know, want to call it God. And this, um, oh, okay, you're quoting Fear and Loathing. Duh. Okay, sorry. I was about to get into something with that shit, so I'm glad you caught me there because I would have fucking felt pretty stupid. Um, anyway, um, but yeah. Anyway, I'm gonna go ahead and call it a night. And I have not indulged in my wine as much as I would like to. I got this thing is absolutely full. It took like 2 sips out of it, dude. So I'm going to, and I'm going to see many of you in Flying Monkeys, which I have thoroughly been enjoying very much. And I'm going to I always check Discord, but Discord has not been a thing very much lately. But anyway, if you guys, if there's any new listeners, and you're not part of my group, you can always request to join my group. If one of the mods would be so kind as to drop a link for that group, it is by the same name, the Glarer. And pretty much you can say whatever you want in there, man. I uh I'm not real big on kicking people out or you know keeping people quiet. It's a pretty much a kind of an anything goes. But I do ask as a favor to try to keep it, human behavior related, articles, that sort of thing, even, I mean, true crime counts, man. So, a lot of you people come from the true crime community. And if there's a crazy case, that kind of makes you go, wow, that person behaved like a fucking psycho. And you want to try to understand it better, and you want to, spark up a discussion on it, then yeah, please, post something in there about it. There's already a bunch of stuff in there. Look through it and comment on it. And it's not nearly as big as either of Kay's groups, but it is growing, and I want to thank all the new members that are listening right now for that. So thanks for joining and contributing the way that you have. Shannon's been doing a great job adminning it, and I really, really appreciate that, Shannon. That's my homegirl. And yeah. If somebody, like I said, would be so kind as to drop a link on there, but I don't know. I may have a setting to where it won't let you. I know, I remember last time, and I have to look into that because you guys tried that last time. But again, just search it. If they can't drop the link, just search it. It's called The Glarer, same name. And yeah, I hope to see you there. It's open to everybody. Anyway, thanks for logging on tonight, guys, and I hope to be on again tomorrow. I'm not going to force myself to come up with some sort of subject matter just to do it. So if I do, so if something just kind of smacks me in the head and I get a wild hair up my ass to do a live, then I will, and I'll let you guys know ahead of time. But for now, thanks so much, and have a fantastic Wednesday night.